Member for Welland.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to rejoin the debate and perhaps to go back just for a second or two and think about transparency, because this bill talks about unions and transparency. So let me give a couple of examples of transparency inside a union, and I can do that, as I said in my first 3 minutes, Mr. Speaker, I can do that from personal experience, since I spent 3 terms plus as the financial officer of one of the largest local unions in this country. So I actually know for what I speak, because I actually used to have to do it. And so here's a little bit about transparency. I was empowered to spend up to $100 if I asked the executive board. But of course, on the government side, they have a bill that's called FIPA with China. There's no transparency with that. They're not talking to us about it in the House of Commons, let alone the Canadian public. So here we have on the union side transparency. On the government side, no transparency. And then, of course, if we wanted to spend more than $100, Mr. Speaker, I had to go to the executive board and ask, get approval, then take it to our membership meeting monthly and say to them, here's what we'd like to do, here's how much we'd like to spend, will you approve that, yes or no, and accept their judgment? Again, openness, Mr. Speaker, transparency, Mr. Speaker. And what do we have on the other side? Well, we have the Nexon deal from last Friday. Yes, we kind of did. No, we kind of didn't. But only in exceptional circumstances might we do it again. What are those exceptional circumstances, we asked the Prime Minister through you, Mr. Speaker, to which the reply is, well, we can't tell you that yet. So on our side, in the union movement, openness, transparency. On the government side, hiding, secretive, opaque, let's not tell them. Why should we ever tell the Canadian public anything? But yet on the union side, we tell our members everything. Not only because we have an obligation, Mr. Speaker, through our constitutions, but we have an obligation to consult with them because we believe that consultation process should be upheld. We believe in openness and transparency with them, much to the chagrin of the member who's brought this bill forward. Of course, I'm not so sure he ever belonged to a union. Perhaps you should have talked to those of us who are in the union movement first, and we could have helped them explain that to them. But then again, he wouldn't have been in the pockets of Merit Construction, in which case, you know, when you talk to Local 27, Carpenters Union in Toronto, and they talk about how they will then have to open up their collective agreements, Mr. Speaker, this government always talks about not taking sides in a commercial environment. But here we have Merit Construction, a non-union contractor in the province of Ontario, across the country actually, who now can find out what that Carpenters local union, Local 27 in Toronto, might be trying to do as it bids on work because of their ability to see inside their collective agreements. Now, what benefit would that be to them? Well, perhaps they could undercut them. Perhaps they could make sure that they didn't certify a union if there's a union attempt. Again, Local 27 is geared by openness and transparency for its membership, and we have a government that is not. And the final piece of openness and transparency, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to unions, when it comes to the finances of the union, the financial officers are ultimately held responsible for the finances of the union. I know that all too well as being one for a long period of time, elected in 3 consecutive terms. Said something, I think, about how I told my members what I did with their money, as I was obligated to do, and fulfilled the obligation. They elected me 3 times. I guess I fulfilled the obligation. So that becomes the other open and transparent piece, their right to remove me as they see fit. In fact, they can recall me. Well, my friends across the way at one time believed in that. But that's gone away. Well, we still believe in that. Inside many unions across this country, you can still recall that individual elected official if you choose. But you certainly can replace that person at an election. Again, open, transparent, democratic. What do we have on this side? We have CETA, the greatest hidden piece of free trade agreement with one of the largest economic blocs in the world, and not one single solitary syllable has been mentioned in this House from this government to anyone else. In fact, not even to their own backbenchers. Even their own backbenchers don't get informed about that. So what do we have on this side? A union that's open, transparent, democratic, and on that side we have opaque, undemocratic, collusional almost, and certainly not forthcoming when it comes to information. So, Mr. Speaker, in their search for openness and transparency, perhaps they should look to us on this side. And we'll help them to inform opinions about being open and transparent and democratic. And perhaps they would finally, for once, bring their information forward around the FIPA with China, around the Nexon deal, around the CETA agreement, and perhaps we would finally have that sense of openness. But as many of my colleagues in the union movement on this side of the House, and there are quite a few, one of the members mentioned that once before, and we're proud to say that. In fact, we're happy to stand up and tell you about it. It's clearly, at the end of the day, this is a target, and the only target is the union movement, the only one that's been targeted inside this legislation. If the member wanted to have open and transparency, then he would have lumped in all of the other great bastions of democracy, the C.D. Howe Institute, the Taxpayers Federation, the National Citizens Coalition, all of those great groups that are transparent and open and tell us all the things that they do. And voluntary as well. And at the end of the day, the RAND formula is there. I guess that'll be probably the next point of attack for one of them, is the RAND formula. The RAND formula gives certain rights, and it was the government that actually gave the unions those rights. It wasn't the union that actually made them up. The union was given those rights by an act of provincial parliaments and indeed this parliament. So at the end of the day, if my colleagues don't like the fact that the unions were there, I guess they don't like the fact that the government gave them that right. And so I suppose that would lead one to say exactly what I said earlier. We have an open and transparent system on the democratic side and the union side, and we have a government here who thinks, well, they shouldn't have it, and we should just simply take it away. So it becomes an undemocratic piece. So I guess they don't believe in the legitimacy of government actually giving that right in the first place when it came to the RAND formula. So ultimately, this bill is wrong-headed. As Local 27 said in Toronto, the Carpenters Union, this bill is about an attack on unions. It's going to cost money to do this, even though my friend and colleague had suggested perhaps not. He now knows that it will, and it will cost much more than he ever thought it was going to cost. The unions know that. This government ought to know this, and they ought to simply just sit down when it comes time to call it. This is a wrong-headed piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to 377.